Honourable David Parker.
To respond to a couple of the points that the Honourable Dr Nick Smith made, and also to reinforce some of the issues that I raised that he didn't address. The first is he hurled across the chamber what he thought was an insult, that we should be ashamed of ourselves being in favour of union movements on this side of the House. Actually, it's not something that we hide. We're actually called the Labour Party. And if ever you had evidence as to why unions are necessary in order to maintain and improve the rights of low and middle income workers, you only got to see what the government did this year with the minimum wage. The minimum wage went up by 25 cents a week in the face of all these huge increases in the cost of living. So you can't rely upon it from the government to get a wage increase. You've actually got to organise your own rights to have a bit of countervailing power in your negotiations with employers in order to earn enough money to live. Now, the other issue, though, that I did raise and I put to the Minister was this question of whether they're going to extend the monopoly rights that are conferred through copyright pursuant to the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations. Now, we all know that the National Party have got an abysmal record at controlling monopoly excess, and one that they should really be ashamed of at the moment is their failure to strip out some of the billions of dollars of excess pricing that we have in electricity, as found by the Commerce Commission in their 2009 report, $4.8 billion of overcharging. Now, Dr Smith will get up to his feet and he'll say, oh, you did nothing about it while in government. Wrong. We regulated prices and lines, and we actually set up the Commerce Commission inquiry that reported just after we left government that proved the $4.8 billion or 18% per annum average overcharge by the state-owned energy companies that National is now going to sell to entrench that price gouging and to make it even worse. Now, that's why, on the basis of that history, it's right for me to come down to this House and inquire whether what you're going to do with monopoly rights in respect of copyright is going to be another example of plundering at the expense of consumers as you favour the interests of the copyright holder. Now, I have already said I agree with copyright. I think we should protect copyright for creative content. Dr Smith didn't seem to hear that when I said that the first time, but that doesn't mean to say that it lasts forever. They are monopoly rights that enable people to monopoly price. Monopolies ought to be controlled in the copyright area as everywhere else. That is why you have a limited term to copyright. That is why the law has a limited term to copyright. Otherwise, those monopoly rents can be extracted forever. That is the theory that lies behind copyright, behind patent law, and behind limited terms to both patents and copyright. And that's why Brian Fellow is right in this article to say that the US trade demands on intellectual property are a real sore point. You can't read it? Well, I'll read it out to you. US trade demands a real sore point. Protectionism provisions in Trans-Pacific talks should alarm our government. Now, Dr Smith also said all our negotiations on the Chinese FTA were in secret. Not so. There were regular briefings of Business New Zealand and the Council of Trade Unions by the Labour-led government. Grant Robertson was involved in them. He was involved in them. So to suggest that we had that same level of secrecy. We still haven't heard from the Minister as to whether he is going to reopen this vexed Section 92A issue pursuant to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and whether he is going to upset the fine balances that have been achieved and endorsed by legislators, and I'm again quoting from this Herald article, Brian Fellow of the 31st of March, whether he's going to upset the fine balances that have been achieved and endorsed by legislators. Sarah said, the US agenda and secretive TPP process could drive a coach and horses through much of that. So that's what That's what this partner of Lowndes, Jordan, said. I'm sure he's a competent person. I've got no reason to doubt that his views are credible. The Herald obviously thought there was some... Mr Chairperson, Mr Chair, Mr
Call
Chair.
the honourable member Melissa Lee.